What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack discovers she was never weak at all? For Alara Whitewood, life meant surviving in the shadows. As an Omega in the Crimson Ridge pack, she'd learned to make herself small, to keep her head down, to accept the scraps of respect tossed her way like bones to a starving dog. She cleaned. She served. She smiled when Alphas sneered and Betas whispered, because that's what Omegas did. They endured. But when Alpha Cade Thornridge stood before the entire pack on the night of the Harvest Moon ceremony and severed their fated mate bond with a single cold declaration, everything changed. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. Not the pack that cast her out, not the parents who'd sworn to protect her, and certainly not the ancient guard that had been waiting centuries for her arrival. The ceremony began like every harvest moon before it, under a sky painted silver and a gathering of 200 wolves pressed shoulder to shoulder in the great clearing. Alara stood at the very edge of the crowd, as she always did, her thin frame nearly disappearing behind the broader bodies of the betas and deltas who wouldn't meet her eyes. She could smell everything. That was the curse and gift of being an Omega. While alphas boasted of strength and betas of cleverness, Omegas felt the world through scent in ways others couldn't imagine. Tonight, the air was thick with anticipation. Pine needles crushed underfoot, the musk of nervous excitement, and underneath it all, the sharp metallic tang of coming change. Her wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin. "Something's wrong," it whispered, though Alara had learned long ago not to trust the voice that others claimed didn't exist in Omegas. They said Omegas were half-formed, that their wolves were too weak to speak, too insignificant to manifest fully. They said a lot of things. Alara wrapped her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders. The October air bit through the fabric, but she'd grown used to the cold. She'd grown used to a lot of things. At 23, she'd spent her entire life on the margins, watching others claim mates and ranks and futures while she scrubbed floors and avoided eye contact. Alpha Marcus Thornridge, the current pack alpha and Cade's father, stood on the raised stone platform at the clearing's center. He was a mountain of a man, his silver-streaked dark hair pulled back, his eyes the color of storm clouds. The scent of old leather and authority rolled off him in waves. "Brothers, sisters, pack," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the gathering. "Tonight we honor the moon goddess and the bonds she weaves between souls." Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew what came next. Everyone knew. For 3 months the pack had whispered about it, speculated about it, celebrated it. Alpha Cade Thornridge, the pack's future leader, would claim his fated mate tonight. And that mate was her. The bond had snapped into place on the summer solstice. She'd been carrying firewood to the packhouse kitchens when she'd felt it, a golden thread of connection that seized her heart and wouldn't let go. She dropped the wood, gasping, as sensations not her own flooded through her. Confidence, power, the intoxicating scent of forest and embers and ozone and steel. Cade. She'd known before she'd even turned around and seen him standing 30 feet away, frozen mid-stride, his silver eyes wide with the same shock. For one heartbeat, she'd let herself hope. Then she'd seen his expression shift, shock to recognition to horror, disgust. He'd walked away without a word. 3 months. 3 months of silence. 3 months of waiting. 3 months of watching other pack members smile at her with pity in their eyes, whispering behind their hands. Poor thing. Fated to an alpha when she's barely above a rogue. He'll reject her publicly. You'll see. But the bond remained, a constant ache in her chest, a thread she couldn't sever no matter how hard she tried. "My son," Alpha Marcus continued, gesturing for Cade to join him on the platform. Cade Thornridge moved through the crowd like a king through his kingdom. At 27, he was everything an alpha should be. Tall, powerfully built, his features sharp and handsome. His dark hair caught the moonlight. His presence commanded attention from every wolf in the clearing. The scent of him, that forest and embers and steel, made Alara's wolf whine with longing. She hated that. Hated how her traitorous body responded to someone who'd made it clear she was beneath him. Cade reached the platform and turned to face the pack. His eyes swept across the crowd, lingering on several unmated she-wolves before finally, inevitably, landing on Alara. She saw the decision in his face before he spoke, saw the cold calculation, saw the choice he'd made to value power over destiny. "Speak your truth, Alpha Marcus," said, the ritual words echoing in the sudden silence. Cade's voice rang out clear and merciless. "I, Cade Thornridge, future Alpha of Crimson Ridge, reject the mate bond forced upon me by fate. I reject Alara Whitewood as my mate. I sever this bond before the moon goddess and the pack." The words hit her like physical blows. The bond began to tear. Alara collapsed to her knees. A scream locked in her throat as agony tore through her chest. It felt like her heart was being ripped in two, like someone had reached inside her ribcage and was pulling her soul apart, fiber by fiber. The golden thread connecting her to Cade turned black, fraying, snapping. Around her, wolves backed away, creating a circle of space as if her pain might be contagious. "I reject you," she gasped out, the required response spilling from her lips even as tears streamed down her face. "I reject you, Cade Thornridge. I sever this bond." The thread snapped completely. Darkness swallowed her vision. She felt herself falling forward, felt the cold earth rising to meet her, but she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but endure as the magic of the severed bond ravaged her body. When the pain finally receded to a manageable roar, she became aware of the silence. 200 wolves stood watching her, and not one moved to help. She pushed herself to her hands and knees, her body shaking. Blood dripped from her nose. The metallic taste filled her mouth. "Remove her," Cade's voice came from above, cold and distant. 2 guards materialized beside her, their hands rough as they hauled her to her feet. Alara's legs wouldn't support her weight. She sagged between them, her vision swimming. "Wait," she heard herself whisper. "My parents." She saw them then, standing in the crowd. Her mother, Mara, looked away. Her father, Thomas, shook his head slowly, deliberately. The message was clear. "You are not our daughter, not anymore." The guards dragged her from the clearing. Behind her, she heard Cade's voice resume the ceremony, already moving on, already forgetting. "Tonight, I choose my mate by right of strength. Lyanna Blackwood, step forward." A beautiful she-wolf with midnight hair and a scent like cinnamon and iron moved toward the platform. Alara knew her. Lyanna was the beta's daughter, ambitious and cruel, and everything an alpha mate should be. They made a perfect pair. The guards dragged Alara past the last row of gathered wolves, past the pack house with its warm lights and welcoming fires, past the boundary markers that denoted pack territory. At the very edge, where packlands met the wild forest, they released her. She collapsed onto the frost-covered ground. "You have until dawn," one guard said, not unkindly. "After that, if you're found on pack territory, you'll be executed as a rogue." They left her there, alone in the darkness, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the howling emptiness where her mate bond had been, above. Storm clouds gathered, blocking out the moon. The first drops of sleet stung Alara's face like needles. She forced herself to move. Staying here meant death, from exposure, from rogues, from the pack's enforcement of their borders. She stumbled into the forest, her legs weak, her head spinning. Every step sent fresh waves of pain through her chest where the bond had been severed. "This is how I die," she thought distantly. Cast out and alone, exactly as everyone expected. Her wolf, silent for so long, suddenly pressed against her consciousness. "No. Move. Find shelter." "I can't," Alara whispered, her voice lost in the rising wind. "Move." The command shocked her into action. Since when did her wolf have such strength? Since when could she feel it so clearly? But questions were luxuries she couldn't afford. The sleet turned to snow, heavy and wet, soaking through her thin shawl within minutes. Her teeth chattered. Her fingers went numb. The forest loomed dark and endless around her, every shadow potentially hiding predators, rogues or worse. She walked for what felt like hours, but might have been minutes. Time lost meaning in the storm. All that existed was the next step, and the next, and the next. When she finally stumbled into the clearing, she almost didn't recognize it as salvation. The structure rose from the snow like a skeleton, an old barn, half collapsed, forgotten by humans years ago. The roof was mostly intact on one side. 3 walls still stood. It was barely shelter, but it was something. Alara dragged herself inside and collapsed in the driest corner. Her body shook violently. The cold had seeped into her bones, and she couldn't feel her feet anymore. Outside, the storm howled with increasing fury, piling snow against the barn's walls. She curled into herself, trying desperately to generate heat. Shift, she thought. My wolf will be warmer. But when she reached for the shift, there was nothing. The pain of the severed bond had depleted her completely. She didn't have the strength. Hours passed. The cold stopped hurting. That should have worried her, but she felt strangely peaceful, detached. She thought of her childhood, of the rare moments when her parents had shown her love before. Before what? Before they'd decided she was worthless, or had they always known something she didn't? This is it, she realized. This is how it ends. Her vision blurred. The darkness at the edges crept inward. She let herself slip away, too exhausted to fight anymore. I'm sorry, she thought, though she wasn't sure who she was apologizing to. Her wolf, the moon goddess, herself? Sleep, her wolf whispered back, and for once the voice sounded sad. Just sleep. Alara's eyes drifted closed. Warmth. That was the first thing she noticed. Warmth where there should have been cold, weight where there should have been emptiness. Alara's consciousness swam upward through layers of darkness. Her body felt heavy, foreign, but she was alive. Definitely alive because everything hurt. She forced her eyes open and found herself staring into eyes the color of molten amber. She gasped. The sound strangled and tried to move. Couldn't. Her body refused to cooperate. Every muscle locked from the cold. The eyes blinked, moved back slightly, and she realized with dawning horror that they belonged to a wolf. Not just any wolf, a massive wolf, easily twice the size of any alpha she'd ever seen, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb light and a presence that made her hindbrain scream, "Danger, danger, danger." But she was still alive. The wolf was lying beside her, its body pressed against hers, sharing warmth. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the barn's gaps. She saw more shapes in the shadows, more wolves. Huge wolves, all of them, arranged in a protective circle around her. She tried to count them, her mind sluggish. 1, 2, 3 by the door, 4 and 5 near the collapsed wall. 6, 7, 8 in the shadows, 9 at her feet, and 10, the massive dark one whose amber eyes still watched her with unsettling intelligence. 10 wolves that could have killed her, 10 wolves that should have killed her. Why? She croaked, her voice barely audible. The dark wolf's ears pricked forward. Then, impossibly, it began to change. Alara watched in stunned silence as the shift occurred. This wasn't the quick, brutal transformation of pain and necessity she'd witnessed before. This was fluid, graceful, almost beautiful. The wolf's form seemed to flow like water, bones and muscles rearranging without violence, fur receding to reveal skin, muzzle shortening to a human face. When the transformation completed, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was perhaps 40, with shoulder-length dark hair streaked with silver, sharp features marked by old scars, and those same amber eyes. He was bare-chested despite the cold, his skin marked with intricate tattoos that seemed to move in the firelight. Wait, firelight? She hadn't noticed the small fire someone had built near her. The man's scent hit her then, and she nearly whimpered. Aged oak and winter snow and pine and storm. It was the scent of ancient forests and endless patience and power that made alpha dominance feel like a child's game. "You're awake," he said, his voice deep and rough like stones grinding together. "Good. We were worried." "We," Alara managed. "My brothers, my family." He gestured to the other wolves, who watched with the same unnerving intelligence. "We've been searching for you for a very long time, Alara Whitewood." Her heart hammered. "You know my name. We know much more than that." He sat back on his heels, studying her with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow felt safe. "I am Theron Shadowborn, commander of the Silver Moon Guard, and you, little Omega, are the one we've waited centuries to find." "I don't understand." "You will," His amber eyes softened fractionally. But first, you need to heal. And then, he paused, something fierce and hopeful crossing his features. Then we'll show you what you really are. Behind him, one of the other wolves, a lean gray one, shifted. It took the form of a younger man with dark hair and silver eyes, his grin sharp. She's smaller than expected. Finn, Theron warned. What? I'm just saying, the prophecy made her sound more impressive. Prophecy? Alara echoed weakly. Theron shot Finn a quelling look before turning back to her. Rest now. When you're stronger, we'll explain everything. But know this. You are not what your pack told you. You were never weak. You were bound. Bound? Your power was locked away, sealed when you were an infant. His expression hardened, and those who should have protected you were the ones who caged you instead. Alara's mind reeled. None of this made sense. She was an Omega, powerless, worthless, everyone. I knew. But even as she thought it, something shifted inside her. Deep in her chest, where the severed mate bond had left a gaping wound, she felt something. A warmth, a presence. Her wolf, stronger than it had ever been, raised its head within her consciousness. Finally, it whispered. Finally, you're beginning to wake. I don't, Alara started, but exhaustion pulled at her again. Sleep, Theron said gently. We'll keep watch. You're safe now. He reached out slowly, giving her time to flinch away, and brushed a strand of damp hair from her face. His touch was warm. You've been alone for too long. That ends tonight. She wanted to argue, to demand answers, to understand. But her body betrayed her, dragging her back down into unconsciousness. As she slipped away, she felt Theron shift back into his wolf form, felt the weight and warmth of him settle against her side. For the first time in 3 months, maybe for the first time ever, Alara felt protected, and somewhere in the darkness, something ancient stirred. She woke to the scent of cooked meat and herb tea. This time, her body obeyed when she tried to move. Alara pushed herself upright slowly, her muscles protesting. She was wrapped in thick furs she didn't remember receiving. The small fire had grown larger, and the barn felt almost warm. Theron sat across the fire in human form, now wearing dark leather pants, though still shirtless. He was feeding wood to the flames, his movements precise and unhurried. When he noticed her sitting up, he smiled, a small, careful expression. Better? He asked. I'm alive, she said. That's more than I expected. You'll have to get used to exceeding expectations. He reached beside him and produced a wooden bowl and a steaming mug. Eat, drink, then we talk. The food was simple, roasted rabbit and root vegetables, but it tasted like heaven. Alara hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite hit her tongue. She devoured it while Theron watched with approval, saying nothing until she'd drained the tea as well. Only then did he speak. How much do you know about pack history? The old stories? The ones everyone knows, Alara said carefully. How the moon goddess created wolves. How the first alphas led our people. The basic— Not those, Theron interrupted. The older stories, the ones packs stopped telling, the prophecies they decided to forget. Alara shook her head. Theron leaned forward, firelight dancing across his scarred features. Before there were alphas and betas and omegas, there were only wolves. Strong wolves, wise wolves, fast wolves, but all equal under the moon. Then humans came, and our people needed structure to survive, so the hierarchy was born. I know this, but what you don't know is that the hierarchy was never meant to be permanent. The moon goddess created the Omega class not as the weakest, but as the most important. Omegas were her chosen, meant to balance. The power of alphas to be voices of peace and healing in a world growing too focused on dominance. Alara stared at him. That's not— No one says that. No one remembers, Theron corrected, because 2,000 years ago the alphas grew afraid. Afraid of Omega power, afraid of being challenged, so they made a choice. They used blood magic to bind Omega wolves, to strip away their strength, to turn the most powerful into the most vulnerable. That's impossible. Is it? His amber eyes bored into hers. Tell me, Alara, have you ever wondered why you can feel emotions that others miss? Why scents speak to you in ways they don't to others? why your instincts are so strong, even when your body is weak. She had. She'd wondered her entire life. Those are echoes, Theron said softly. Fragments of what you were meant to be. But the binding held you back, kept you small, kept you prey instead of predator. Even if this is true, Alara said, her voice shaking, why tell me? I'm still bound. I'm still... No, Theron interrupted, and something fierce blazed in his expression. You're not. That's what your former alpha never understood. Mate bonds are ancient magic, Alara, powerful magic. When Cade Thornridge severed your bond, he didn't just break your heart. He shattered the binding that held your power captive. The world tilted. What? The rejection broke the seal. Theron stood, moving around the fire to crouch beside her. Your power is waking up. You're already feeling it, aren't you? Your wolf is stronger, your senses sharper. The pain of the severed bond should have killed you, would have killed any normal Omega, but you're still here. Because you were never normal. Alara's hands were shaking. Who am I? Theron's expression softened. You are the one the prophecy speaks of. The old texts called you by many names, the Unbound, the Moon's Daughter, the Balance. But the title that matters is this. You are the matriarch, the mother of wolves, the queen of queens. No, Alara whispered. That's not... I can't be... Listen. And he spoke the words that had been carved in stone 3,000 years ago, his voice taking on a rhythmic, ancient quality. When silver moon meets blood-red sky, when false bonds break and true souls cry, the matriarch shall wake at last, with power stolen from the past. She will be gentle as morning rain, yet fierce enough to break a chain. She will be hunted, cast aside, with nowhere left to run or hide. She'll come when packs forget their way, when alphas rule through fear, not say. And she will rise from ash and pain to balance what was lost again. Silence fell between them, broken only by the crackle of flames. That's... Alara couldn't finish the sentence. You, Theron said simply, we've been searching for generations, my brothers and I. He gestured to the massive wolves sleeping around the barn. We were warriors who fought in the Great Northern War 2 centuries ago. When we fell in battle, the moon goddess gave us a choice. Pass on to her eternal forests, or remain and wait for the prophesied one. You've been waiting 200 years? We swore an oath. His expression was fierce. To find the matriarch, to protect her, to help her reclaim what was stolen. We've watched packs rise and fall. We've seen the corruption spread, seen Omegas suffer. And we waited, because we knew you would come. How? Alara demanded. How did you know it was me? The scent. Theron breathed in slowly, deliberately. Lavender and morning dew and wildflowers, the scent of the moon goddess herself. Every true Omega carries a trace of it, but in you... His eyes glowed faintly. In you, it's overwhelming. You're her direct bloodline, Alara, her first daughter's descendant. Alara's wolf surged forward in her consciousness, stronger than ever. Yes, it whispered. Yes, this is truth. This is what we were. This, meant to be. I don't know how to be what you're saying, Alara whispered. You will learn. Theron reached out, and this time she didn't flinch when he took her hand. His touch was warm, anchoring. You won't be alone. That's why we're here. The Silver Moon Guard exists for you and you alone. My parents, Alara said suddenly. If what you're saying is true, if I was bound as an infant... They did it, Theron confirmed, his voice gentling. Thomas and Mara Whitewood bound your power when you were 3 days old. I know because I watched it happen. Pain lanced through her chest, worse than the severed mate bond. You... watched? We couldn't stop it, he said, and for the first time she heard regret in his voice. The binding ritual requires blood from both parents. It has to be done willingly. We tried to intervene, but he shook his head. Your parents were terrified. A local seer had told them what you were, what you would become. They believed that if you manifested your full power, alphas from every pack would come to kill you, to eliminate the threat before you grew strong enough to challenge them. So they crippled me instead, Alara said bitterly. They thought they were protecting you. Theron's grip on her hand tightened. Fear makes people do terrible things, but the binding was always temporary. It was only meant to last until you came of age. Your parents were supposed to break it themselves on your 18th birthday. But they didn't. No. By then, they'd seen how well you fit into Omega life, how you survived by being small and quiet and unnoticed. They convinced themselves you were safer this way, that breaking the binding would only bring you pain. His expression hardened. They were cowards. Alara pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. Too much. This was all too much. She was supposed to be nothing, less than nothing. An Omega rejected by her mate, cast out by her pack, dying in a frozen barn. She wasn't supposed to be whatever this was. I need time, she whispered. And you'll have it, Theron promised. But Alara, you need to understand, your power is already waking. In a few days, maybe less, your wolf will force the first full shift. And when that happens, he paused, when that happens, you'll need us, because you won't shift into a normal wolf. You'll become what you truly are, and the transformation can be overwhelming. What if I can't control it? That's why we're here. He gestured around the barn, and several of the sleeping wolves raised their heads, amber and silver eyes glowing in the darkness. Each of us has trained for centuries to help you master your abilities. You won't face this alone. As if summoned by his words, the young man from before, Finn, shifted and padded over. Up close, his wolf form was massive, with pale gray fur and eyes like winter ice. Theron smiled slightly. Finn will help you with combat training. He's insufferable, but he's the best fighter I've ever seen. Finn's tail wagged once, a very human gesture of amusement. Another wolf shifted, this one female, with russet fur and gentle amber eyes. She became a woman in her 30s, graceful and serene, wearing simple leathers. This is Sarah, Theron continued. She'll teach you control, how to shift without pain, how to manage the power surge when it comes. I'm also good with healing, Sarah added, her voice melodic, which you'll need, since Finn enjoys breaking bones. Only in training, Finn protested, suddenly human again and completely unconcerned about his nudity. And they always heal. More wolves shifted, introducing themselves one by one. Marcus, old and wise, specializing in strategy. Kaida, fierce and protective, expert in tracking. Ash and Ember, twins who fought in perfect synchronization. Rowan, quiet and deadly, master of stealth. And Lyra, the youngest of them all, barely 20 when she died, now eternally youthful, specializing in speed. 10 warriors, 10 protectors, 10 souls who'd chosen to wait centuries for her. It was too much kindness, too much faith, too much everything. Why? Alara asked, looking at each of them. Why do you believe in this so much, in me? Theron crouched before her again, his amber eyes serious. Because we've seen what happens when the balance is lost. We've watched alphas become tyrants, watched packs tear each other apart over territory and mates. We've seen omegas suffer in ways that would make the moon goddess weep. And we've waited, knowing that one day someone would come who could fix it. He reached out, and this time she let him cup her face gently. You are that someone, Alara, not because of prophecy or bloodlines or ancient magic, but because you've known suffering. You've known rejection and pain and humiliation. And when you come into your power, and you will, you'll use it not for revenge, but for justice. Because that's who you are. Tears streaked down Alara's face. She didn't know if she believed him, didn't know if she could be what he claimed, but she knew one thing. She was tired of being small. Teach me, she whispered. Theron's smile was fierce and proud. Gladly. But first, let your power wake. Let your wolf rise. And then, little matriarch, we'll teach you to change the world. It happened 3 days later, in the hour before dawn. Alara woke to fire in her veins. She gasped, clutching at her chest as power surged through her body like lightning. Every nerve ending lit up. Her heart hammered impossibly fast. Her wolf was no longer a quiet presence in the back of her mind. It was roaring, demanding, pushing to the surface with unstoppable force. Theron! She managed to scream. He was beside her instantly, his hand on her shoulder. It's happening. Your first true shift. Don't fight it, Alara. Let it come. It hurts. I know. His voice was soothing, steady. But this isn't the pain of breaking bones. This is the pain of becoming. Let your wolf out. Let her show you what you are. The other guards formed a circle around her, all in wolf form, their presence grounding. Alara felt their support like a physical thing, wrapping around her, encouraging her. Stop being afraid, her wolf growled. We are not prey. We have never been prey. And suddenly, Alara stopped fighting. She surrendered to the shift. Her bones didn't snap. They flowed, lengthening and reshaping like water, taking new form. Fur erupted across her skin, not painful but exhilarating, silver and white and shimmering like starlight. Her muscles expanded, power flooding into every fiber. Her senses exploded outward. She could smell everything for miles, hear the heartbeat of every living thing in the forest, feel the pull of the earth beneath her paws. Pause. She had pause. Alara looked down at herself and gasped, or would have if wolves could gasp. She was massive, larger than Theron, larger than any wolf she'd ever seen. Her fur gleamed like moonlight, and when she caught sight of her eyes reflected in a pool of melted snow, they glowed with an ethereal blue-white light. "This is us," her wolf whispered, and there was joy in the voice. "This is what we were meant to be." Power erupted from her core, a wave of energy that swept outward like a shock wave. The barn's remaining walls shuddered, the fire blazed brighter, and every wolf in the clearing dropped to their bellies, heads bowed. Even Theron. "What's happening?" Alara panicked. "It's your dominance." Theron's voice filled her mind, and she realized with shock that she could hear him speaking telepathically. "Your aura. You're manifesting your full power. Don't be afraid. This is normal for you." Normal. Nothing about this felt normal. She tried to take a step and nearly fell. Her body was too big, too unfamiliar. But Sarah shifted beside her, sending waves of calming energy. "Easy," Sarah's metal voice was. "Gentle. Moving in your true form takes practice. You're not just a wolf, matriarch. You're something more, something ancient." Alara focused on her paws, on the ground beneath them. One step, then another. Slowly, carefully, she learned to walk, then to run. And when she howled, when she threw back her head and let her voice echo across the forest, the sound shook the very trees. Miles away, in the Crimson Ridgepack territory, every wolf stopped what they were doing. They heard that howl, felt the power in it, and trembled. Cade Thornridge, lying in bed with Leanna curled against his side, shot upright, his eyes wide with shock. He knew that voice. Impossible. She should be dead. But deep in his chest, where the severed mate bond had left a scar, something stirred. A ghost of connection, a whisper of recognition. Somewhere out there, the Omega he'd rejected had just announced her existence to the world, and nothing would ever be the same. "You're thinking too much," Finn said, circling her in his massive gray wolf form. "Fighting isn't about thought, it's about instinct." Alara growled at him, her new form still feeling strange despite 2 weeks of practice. They'd left the barn days ago, moving to a hidden valley deeper in the mountains where the Silvermoon Guard had maintained a secret den for decades. It was ancient and protected by wards that made it invisible to outside wolves. The valley had become her whole world. Training ground, sanctuary, home. Finn lunged without warning. Alara barely dodged, her reflexes still too slow. He caught her shoulder, sending her tumbling. She rolled and came up snarling, frustration burning hot. "Again," Finn commanded, "and this time, use your senses. Smell my intention. Feel my movement before it happens." She wanted to snap at him, but she knew he was right. So she breathed deep, letting her enhanced senses expand outward. Finn's scent shifted. There, a spike of adrenaline, the tightening of muscles preparing to pounce. She moved before he did, darting left as he lunged right. His jaws snapped on empty air. "Better," Finn barked, delight in his metal voice. "Now counter." Alara spun and launched herself at him, using her larger mass to her advantage. They collided in a tangle of fur and fangs. She got her jaws around his scruff and held, not biting down, just maintaining control. Finn went still beneath her, then shifted back to human form, grinning up at her. "That's it. That's using your dominance, not just your size. You could have beaten me into submission without a single bite." Alara shifted as well, breathing hard. Shifting had become easier with practice, almost natural. I don't like hurting you. You can't hurt me, little queen. I'm already dead, remember? His grin widened. But you can absolutely dominate me, which is the point. You need to learn to command without violence. That's what makes a matriarch different from an alpha. Alphas rule through strength. You'll rule through presence. Sarah approached from the tree line, a basin of water floating beside her through what looked like telekinesis. Alara still wasn't used to that. Each guard had manifested unique abilities during their centuries of service, gifts from the moon goddess to help them fulfill their oath. How's your empathic sense developing? Sarah asked, setting the basin down so Alara could drink. Stronger every day, Alara admitted. Sometimes too strong. I can feel the pack, the Crimson Ridge pack. Even from here, I can sense their fear and confusion. They felt your howl, Theron said, emerging from the den entrance. He was back in human form, dressed in his usual leathers. Word is spreading. The packs are talking about a massive wolf seen in the northern forests. They're afraid. Good, Finn said darkly. No, Alara corrected, and her voice carried a new authority that made even Finn pause. Not good. Fear creates violence. I don't want them afraid. I want them to understand. Theron's expression filled with approval. Spoken like a true leader. But understanding will take time. For now, focus on mastering your abilities. Over the following days, that's exactly what she did. Sarah taught her to shift without conscious thought, to flow between forms as easily as breathing. She learned to control the aura of dominance that radiated from her true form, to dial it up or down depending on the situation. Marcus schooled her in pack dynamics and history, filling the gaps in her knowledge with centuries of observation. She learned about territories and treaties, about the Great Northern War and the fracturing that had split the packs. Kaida showed her how to track, how to read the forest, how to move without leaving traces. The lessons were harder than combat training. Alara had spent her life being unseen, but being actively stealthy required different skills. The twins, Ash and Ember, taught her pack communication, showing her how to send complex messages through howls and gestures. They also taught her to fight as part of a unit, to coordinate attacks and defenses with others. Rowan, quiet and intense, focused on meditation and control. He taught her to calm the raging power inside her, to access it without being overwhelmed. Those lessons saved her sanity more than once when the surges threatened to consume her. And Lyra, youngest and swiftest, showed her joy. How to run for the pure pleasure of it. How to hunt not from necessity but for the thrill. How to remember that power didn't have to be a burden, it could be a gift. Through it all, Theron remained her constant anchor. He pushed her harder than anyone, never accepting anything less than her best. But he was also the first to notice when she was overwhelmed, the first to suggest rest, the first to sit with her by the fire when nightmares of rejection plagued her sleep. You're doing remarkably well, he said one evening, 3 weeks into her training. They sat at the valley's edge, watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. I don't feel remarkable, Alara admitted. I feel lost. Powerful, yes, but still lost. That's natural. You're rebuilding yourself from the ground up. Theron's hand found hers, and she noted that the touch no longer surprised her. Somewhere along the way, his presence had become as natural as breathing. But you're not the broken Omega they cast out anymore. You're becoming the queen you were meant to be. What if I don't want to be a queen? The words escaped before she could stop them. What if I just want to be me? You can be both. Theron turned to face her, his amber eyes reflecting the dying light. Being the matriarch doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding the self you've always had hidden inside, the one who was too strong for them to allow, so they made you believe you were weak. Alara looked at him, truly looked, at the scars that marked his face and body, each one a story of battles fought, at the gray in his hair that somehow made him more distinguished, at the way he looked at her, not with pity or fear or disgust, but with respect, pride, and something deeper. Theron, she said slowly, why do you really stay? It's not just the oath, is it? His expression softened. No, it's not just the oath. He reached up, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. When we swore to find and protect the matriarch, We knew we were giving up our chance for mates, for families, for normal lives. 2 centuries is a long time to be alone. But the moment I saw you in that barn, the moment I caught your scent and saw you still breathing despite everything that should have killed you." He paused. The moon goddess doesn't believe in fated mates the way modern packs do. She believes in chosen mates, in souls that recognize each other and decide with full awareness to bond. Alara's breath caught. "You're saying—" "I'm saying I've waited 200 years for you. Not because of prophecy or duty, but because my soul knew even then that you would be worth every moment of waiting." His thumb brushed her cheek. "I'm not asking you to feel the same. You've been rejected once, and the wound is still fresh. But when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I want you to know that I choose you, not because you're the matriarch, but because you're Alara." Tears welled in her eyes. After Cade's rejection, she'd thought herself broken, unlovable. But Theron was offering her something entirely different, not a fated bond that could be severed, but a conscious choice built on respect and understanding. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "Then we wait," Theron said simply. "I've gotten good at waiting." But he didn't pull away, and when Alara leaned forward, closing the distance between them, his lips met hers with a gentleness that made her wolf purr with contentment. This wasn't the desperate pull of a fated bond. It was better. It was choice. It was real. When they finally broke apart, Theron rested his forehead against hers. "You are incredible, Alara Whitewood, and I swear to you I will spend every day proving that you were worth finding." "You already have," she whispered back, and for the first time since her rejection, Alara felt whole. The scout was young and foolish, which was the only reason he got close enough to see anything. Ryder, a beta from Crimson Ridge, had been sent to investigate reports of the massive wolf. Alpha Cade wanted answers, wanted to know if the rumors were true, so Ryder tracked north, following whispers and half-seen shadows until he found the valley. The wards should have stopped him. Would have stopped him if he'd been trying to enter, but Ryder had only meant to observe from the ridge, to see what he could see and report back. What he saw made his blood run cold. Wolves. Massive wolves, each one larger than the biggest alpha. They moved through the valley with military precision, clearly training, and in the center, coordinating them, was a wolf that defied belief. She gleamed like moonlight given form. She moved with a grace that spoke of absolute confidence. And when she howled, calling the others to her, Ryder felt his knees buckle with the instinctive urge to submit. She was wrong. Wolves weren't supposed to be that big, weren't supposed to radiate that kind of power. Then she shifted. Ryder nearly fell off the ridge. The silver wolf flowed into a woman with wild silver-white hair and eyes that glowed faintly even in human form. She was beautiful, yes, but that wasn't what stunned him. It was her face. Alara Whitewood, the rejected Omega, the weakling they'd cast out to die. Except she clearly wasn't weak anymore, wasn't Omega anymore, wasn't anything he understood. Cade needs to know, Ryder thought frantically. The Alpha needs to know what she's become. He turned to leave and found himself face with a massive gray wolf with winter ice eyes. Finn's mental voice was cold. "Bad idea, Scout. Very bad idea." Ryder returned to Crimson Ridge 3 days later, wild-eyed and babbling. The Pack Council gathered in the Great Hall, Alpha Cade at the head, his father Marcus to his right, and Lyanna Blackwood, now officially Cade's chosen mate, at his left. 20 other high-ranking wolves filled the benches. "Speak," Cade commanded, his voice tight with impatience. Ryder told them everything. The valley, the massive wolves, the impossible power, and finally, the impossible woman. "Alara Whitewood lives," he finished, his voice shaking. "And she's not what we thought. She's not an Omega. She's something else, something ancient." Silence fell across the hall. "That's impossible," Lyanna said sharply. She'd been particularly pleased about Alara's disappearance, as it had cleared her path to becoming alpha female. "Omegas don't just become powerful, and even if they did, no wolf rejected by their fated mate could survive." "I saw her," Ryder insisted. "She's alive, she's strong, and she has an army." Cade's expression remained carefully neutral, but Marcus Thornridge went pale. "Describe the wolves again, their size, their bearing." Ryder did. Marcus stood abruptly. "We need to call a council, immediately, of all the northern packs." "Father, what?" "The Silver Moon Guard," Marcus breathed. "Their legend, ghosts from the Great Northern War. But if they've appeared—" He looked at Cade, and for the first time there was fear in his eyes. "Then the prophecy is real, and the matriarch has awakened." "What prophecy?" Lyanna demanded, but Marcus was already moving toward the archives, muttering to himself. "I need to check the old texts, need to confirm. Oh, Moon Goddess, what have we done?" Cade remained seated, his hands clenched on the armrests of his alpha chair, the ghost of pain in his chest, where the severed bond left it so. Scar pulsed with renewed intensity. She was alive. Not just alive, powerful. And he'd rejected her. Cast her out, sent her to die. The alpha in him wanted to dismiss it as impossible, but the part that had felt the bond, that still sometimes woke reaching for a connection that wasn't there, knew the truth. He'd made a mistake. Not the small mistake of choosing the wrong mate, not even the medium mistake of public rejection. He'd made the kind of mistake that legends were written about, the kind that toppled kingdoms. Word spread like wildfire. Within a week, every pack within 300 miles knew the story. The rejected Omega lives. She commands the Silver Moon Guard. She's coming. Some packs laughed, others panicked. A few wise alphas began checking their ancient texts, confirming what Marcus Thornridge had discovered. The prophecy of the matriarch was real. In the hidden valley, Alara felt the spreading fear through her empathic senses. "They know," she said, standing at the valley's edge once more. She wore simple leathers now, crafted by Sarah from deerhide. Her hair had grown longer, wild and silver white. She looked nothing like the broken Omega who'd stumbled into the barn 5 weeks ago. "Are you ready?" Theron asked, standing beside her. The bond between them had deepened over the weeks, not fated but chosen, built on trust and respect in something neither of them had named yet, but both felt. "No," Alara admitted, "but I don't think I'll ever be completely ready, so we might as well do it now." Finn shifted into human form, grinning wickedly. "Finally. I was getting tired of just training. Time to actually use our skills." "This isn't about violence," Alara reminded him. "We're not attacking. We're asserting territory and authority. There's a difference." "Boring," Finn muttered, but his eyes gleamed with approval. Sarah stepped forward. "The Crimson Ridge Pack will be the hardest. They rejected you. They know your face. They'll see your return as a threat. Then we make them see it as an opportunity instead," Alara said firmly. She'd spent weeks planning this moment with Theron and Marcus. "We show them what true leadership looks like, what the old ways meant, and we give them a choice, join the new order or stand against it." "And if they choose to stand against?" Kaida asked. Alara's eyes glowed faintly. "Then we show them why the Moon Goddess made me what I am." The Silver Moon Guard shifted into their massive wolf forms, arranging themselves around Alara in formation. They looked like an army from legend, 10 dire wolves of impossible size, each radiating power that made normal alpha dominance feel like a whisper. Alara shifted last, her transformation smooth and graceful now. Her silver-white form gleamed in the afternoon sun. She was larger than all of them, her presence undeniable. Together, they began to run. They reached the Crimson Ridge border by nightfall. And Alara Whitewood, the Omega who should have died, the matriarch who would change everything, threw back her head and howled a challenge that shook the earth. The pack gathered in the great clearing within minutes of hearing the howl. 200 wolves, every one of them tense, many already shifted and ready for war. Cade stood at the front, Lyanna beside him, his father and the council arrayed behind them. The guards formed a defensive line across the clearing. They didn't have to wait long. 11 massive shapes emerged from the tree line. They moved in perfect synchronization, a display of coordination that spoke of centuries of practice. The clearing's torches revealed their impossible size, their predatory grace. The Crimson Ridge wolves shrank back instinctively. The largest wolf, silver-white and glowing like captured moonlight, stepped forward. Power radiated from her in waves, pressing down on every wolf in the clearing like a physical weight. "Hold!" Cade commanded, his alpha voice ringing out. But even his dominance felt thin and weak compared to the presence before them. The silver wolf shifted. Alara Whitewood stood naked and unashamed, her silver-white hair falling past her shoulders, her eyes glowing with ethereal light. She looked nothing like the timid Omega they'd known. She looked like a goddess given flesh. "Hello, Crimson Ridge," she said, her voice carrying effortlessly. "I'm told you thought I was dead." Lyanna stepped forward, her cinnamon and iron scent sharp with anger. "You should be. You were rejected. Cast out. What right do you have to return?" "Every right," Alara said calmly. "This territory borders the northern wildlands. Those wildlands are mine now, claimed and held by ancient law, which means we're neighbors. And I thought it was time we had a conversation about how things are going to work from now on." "You claim no territory here," Cade said, and Alara finally looked at him directly. She felt a ghost of pain, a shadow of what the severed bond had been, but nothing more. That part of her had healed. "You're a rogue, an Omega. You have no authority." "I'm not an Omega," Alara interrupted, her voice hard. "I never was. I was bound as an infant, my power locked away by parents who feared what I would become. But you," she pointed at Cade, "you broke that binding when you severed our mate bond, and for that, Alpha Thornridge, I should probably thank you." Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. "You're lying," Lyanna spat. "There's no such thing as binding powers. You're just—" She lunged, shifting mid-leap, her black wolf form massive and deadly. She never reached Alara. Alara's hand shot out, and Lyanna's wolf form slammed into an invisible wall, suspended 3 feet off the ground. Alara hadn't moved, hadn't shifted, hadn't done anything except raise her hand. "I warned you," Alara said softly. "This is not about violence. But if you insist on testing me, Lyanna Blackwood, then let me show you the difference between an alpha and a matriarch." She clenched her fist. Lyanna's wolf convulsed, dropping to the ground, forced into submission by sheer dominance. She whimpered, unable to move, unable to shift back, utterly helpless. Every wolf in the clearing felt it, the weight of Alara's power pressing down like the hand of the moon goddess herself. "Enough," Cade said, and there was fear in his voice now. Real fear. "Please, don't hurt her." Alara released her hold. Lyanna scrambled backward, shifting into human form, her eyes wide with shock. "I don't want to hurt anyone," Alara said, addressing the crowd. "I came to deliver a message, nothing more. The old ways are returning. The hierarchy you've known, Alpha above Beta above Omega, was a perversion of the moon goddess's design. It will end." "You can't just—" someone shouted from the crowd. "I can," Alara said firmly, "and I will, but not through conquest, not through violence, through choice." She looked at each of them in turn. "I'm creating a new pack. The first true pack in 2,000 years, where rank isn't determined by birth but by contribution, where Omegas are valued as healers and empaths, not treated as weak, where Alphas lead through wisdom, not just strength." "And if we don't join?" Marcus Thornridge asked quietly. "Then you don't join," Alara said simply. "I'm not here to force anyone. But know this, I am the matriarch. I hold the northern territories, and any wolf who seeks refuge from their pack, any Omega who suffers under unjust laws, any wolf who remembers the old ways, they will find sanctuary with me." She gestured, and the 10 massive wolves behind her shifted into human forms. They stood tall and proud, ancient warriors given purpose once more. "This is the Silver Moon Guard," Alara announced. "They have served the moon goddess for centuries, waiting for her chosen to awaken. They serve me now, and through me they serve the balance they're on." Stepped forward, moving to stand beside Alara. He was careful not to touch her, not to make any gesture that might be seen as ownership. This was her moment. "Some of you remember the old stories," he said, his voice carrying that same ancient authority. "The prophecy of the one who would come when packs lost their way. Look at her and tell me the prophecy lies." Silence fell. Wolves looked at each other, uncertain. Finally, someone from the back of the crowd, an older she-wolf with gray-streaked fur, stepped forward. She shifted into human form, revealing a woman in her 60s, scarred and weathered. "I remember," she said. "My grandmother told me the stories, said one day the matriarch would come, that she'd be cast out and left to die, but she'd return stronger." She looked at Alara with something like wonder. "It's you. You're real." "I'm real," Alara confirmed gently. The older wolf dropped to one knee. "Then I pledge to you, matriarch, I'm tired of pretending to be weak, tired of hiding what I am." "Rise," Alara said. "I accept no wolf who kneels from fear, only those who choose to stand with me of their own free will." The woman rose, tears on her face, and then, slowly, others began to step forward. Not many, perhaps a dozen out of 200. But they came. Omegas mostly, but a few betas, even one young alpha who looked ashamed. "This is treason," Liana hissed. "This is choice," Alara corrected. She looked at Cade. "I'm not here to destroy your pack, Cade Thornridge. I'm here to offer an alternative. Rule as you see fit, but know that your wolves now have somewhere else to go, somewhere they'll be valued." Cade's expression was anguished. "Alara, I don't," she said quietly. "Whatever you want to say, I don't need to hear it. You made your choice that night. I've made mine now. We're even." "We'll never be even," Cade said, and there was genuine regret in his voice. "I rejected my fated mate. I cast you out. You freed." "Me," Alara interrupted. "You couldn't have known it, but when you broke that bond, you shattered the binding that held me back. So yes, Alpha Thornridge, we're even." She turned to address the crowd one final time. "I'll be in the Northern Valley. Any wolf who wishes to join me is welcome. Any wolf who seeks counsel or mediation will be heard, and any wolf who threatens another under my protection will face judgment." With that, she shifted back into her massive silver wolf form. The Silvermoon Guard shifted as well, surrounding the dozen wolves who'd chosen to follow her. Together, they melted back into the forest, leaving the Crimson Ridge Pack in stunned silence. Cade stood alone at the front of the clearing, watching them go. The ghost of the severed bond ached in his chest, not with longing for the mate he'd lost, but with the knowledge of what he'd lost. Not an Omega, a queen, and he'd thrown her away. In the following weeks, Alara's pack grew, not rapidly, but steadily. Wolves trickled in from surrounding territories, Omegas seeking refuge, Betas tired of endless dominance games, even a few Alphas who remembered the old stories and believed in something more. The valley transformed. Dens were dug and reinforced. A central gathering space took shape. The Silvermoon Guard taught new arrivals how to fight, how to shift with control, how to work as a unit rather than a hierarchy. And Alara herself transformed most of all. Gone was the hesitant, broken girl who'd collapsed in a snowstorm. In her place stood a leader who was fierce and gentle in equal measure. She settled disputes with wisdom rather than violence. She healed wounds with empathic touch. She taught her wolves that strength came in many forms. With Theron at her side, officially her chosen mate now, a bond sealed under the full moon with the entire pack as witness, she began to reshape the northern territories into something new, something better. But not everyone was pleased with the change. 3 months after her return, as spring thawed the northern forests, a messenger arrived in the valley, a scarred beta carrying a formal challenge scroll. "The Alpha Coalition," the beta announced, his voice shaking with equal parts fear and duty. 7 packs acting in concert. They demand you submit to their authority or face war. Alara took the scroll, reading the terms. They wanted her to disband her pack, release her followers back to their original territories, and submit to judgment for unlawfully claiming territory and inciting rebellion. In short, they wanted to destroy everything she'd built. "Tell the coalition," Alara said calmly, "that I decline their generous offer. This territory is mine by ancient right. My pack follows me by choice. And if they want war," she looked at Theron, at the Silvermoon Guard, at the 50 wolves who now called this valley home, "then they'd better bring a bigger army." The messenger fled. "They'll come," Finn said, his expression eager. 20 packs mean maybe 200 warriors, maybe 300. "We have 50, Sarah pointed out. "Even with our advantages, we're outnumbered." "Numbers aren't everything," Theron said. He looked at Alara. "What do you want to do?" Alara closed her eyes, reaching out with her empathic senses. She could feel the approaching threat, could taste the fear and anger of alphas who saw her as a threat to their authority. They weren't wrong to be afraid. "We meet them at the southern ridge," she said finally. "We show them exactly what they're up against, and we give them one chance to stand down before this gets bloody." "And if they don't stand down?" Kaida asked. Alara's eyes glowed with ethereal light. "Then we remind the packs why the matriarch was created in the first place. We remind them what real power looks like." 3 days later, the armies met. The southern ridge formed a natural amphitheater with steep slopes on either side and a wide valley floor between. The coalition forces gathered on the southern end, 273 wolves by Alara's count, with 20 alphas at the front. They'd brought their strongest warriors, their most dominant fighters. Alara's pack stood at the northern end, 53 wolves, including the Silver Moon Guard. They looked pitifully outnumbered. The coalition's leader, an older alpha named Garrick from the Steelclaw pack, stepped forward. He was massive, even by alpha standards, his gray wolf form scarred from decades of battles. He shifted into human form, his voice carrying across the valley. "Alara Whitewood, we offer you one final chance. Surrender now, disband your pack, and submit to judgment. Do this, and we'll be merciful." Alara stepped forward as well, shifting into her human form. She wore simple leathers, but power radiated from her like heat from a forge. Behind her, the Silver Moon Guard shifted into their human forms as well, a display of unity. "I decline," Alara said calmly. "This territory is mine, my pack is free, and I submit to no one except the Moon Goddess herself." "Then you choose war," Garrick growled. "No, you chose war." Alara's eyes blazed. "I chose freedom. If you can't tell the difference, that's your failing, not mine." "Attack!" Garrick roared. The coalition forces surged forward, 273 wolves in full battle shift, a tidal wave of fur and fangs and fury. Alara raised one hand. The Silver Moon Guard shifted, but not into their normal forms, not into the massive dire wolves the coalition had been prepared for. They shifted into something older, something forgotten. Each guard grew larger, their forms taking on characteristics that were more than wolf, more than natural. Finn became a creature of living storm, electricity crackling across his fur. Sarah transformed into something that shimmered between forms, neither fully solid nor spirit. Ash and Ember merged into a single entity, of flame and shadow. They'd hidden their true nature until now. These weren't just ancient warriors. They were chosen by the Moon Goddess herself, blessed, enhanced, eternal. The coalition forces faltered, seeing the 10 impossible beings arrayed against them. And then Alara shifted. Her transformation shook the earth. She grew larger than before, larger than she'd known she could be, her silver-white fur blazing with internal light. Her eyes glowed like twin moons. And from her came an aura of such overwhelming dominance that every wolf on the battlefield, every single one, dropped to their bellies involuntarily. Even the alphas, even Garrick. "I am the matriarch," Alara's voice rang out, not spoken, but felt by every wolf present. It echoed in their minds, in their souls, in the very marrow of their bones. "I am the balance. I am the will of the Moon Goddess made manifest." She padded forward slowly, each step deliberate. The coalition wolves parted before her, unable to do anything but submit to the overwhelming pressure of her presence. "You came here to destroy me," she continued, her mental voice calm but absolute, "to force me back into chains, to punish me for refusing to be weak." She stopped in front of Garrick, towering over him. "But I'm not weak. I was never weak. I was sleeping, and now I'm awake." She lowered her massive head until she was eye to eye with the trembling alpha. "So here's what happens next. You will return to your packs. You will tell them what you saw here today, and you will tell them that the old ways are ending. The hierarchy built on fear and oppression is crumbling, and in its place, something better is rising." She stepped back, her aura easing slightly so the wolves could breathe again. "Any wolf who seeks shelter will find it with me. Any Omega who suffers will have sanctuary. Any Alpha who rules through wisdom rather than violence will find an ally. And any pack that threatens my territory, my wolves, or the balance I'm working to restore, her eyes blazed brighter. Will face judgment. Garrick found his voice, though it shook. You're declaring yourself above all packs? Making yourself queen? No, Alara corrected. I'm not making myself anything. I simply am. The prophecy was real. The matriarch has awakened, and nothing you do can change that. The only question is whether you work with me to create something better, or whether you cling to the old ways until they collapse around you. She shifted back to human form, deliberately showing her vulnerability, proving she had nothing to fear from them. I don't want war, she said, her voice softer now, but no less powerful. I want peace, real peace, where wolves aren't divided by arbitrary ranks, where omegas are valued, not victimized, where strength is measured by more than dominance. Help me build that, please. The battlefield was silent except for the wind. Finally, a young alpha from the back of the coalition forces stood. He was perhaps 25, with kind eyes despite his strong frame. I'll help, he said quietly. My pack has suffered under the old ways. My Omega sister took her own life last year because she couldn't bear the shame anymore. His voice broke. I don't want any more wolves to suffer like she did. He walked forward, crossing the invisible line between the two armies, and knelt before Alara. I'm Ronan, Alpha of the Riverbend Pack, and I pledge my support to your cause, Matriarch. Alara helped him stand. Rise, Ronan. Stand with me, don't kneel to me. That's the whole point. One by one, others followed. Not all, many of the older, more traditional alphas retreated with Garrick, unwilling to accept the change. But enough. By the time the dust settled, 40 wolves from various coalition packs had defected, choosing Alara's vision over their former leaders. The coalition retreated, diminished and shaken. Alara watched them go, flanked by Theron and the Silver Moon Guard, surrounded by nearly 100 wolves who'd chosen her freely. You showed mercy, Theron observed quietly. You could have destroyed them. That's not what this is about, Alara said. Fear creates temporary compliance. Understanding creates lasting change. She looked at him, this ancient warrior who'd waited centuries for her, who'd become her mate and partner and equal. We're building something that has to last, something that can't be maintained by violence. You're remarkable, Theron said, pulling her close. We're remarkable, she corrected, gesturing to include everyone around them, all of us, together. From the back of the crowd, Finn wolf whistled. Get a den, you two. Laughter rippled through the pack, releasing the tension. They'd won today without a drop of blood spilled. They'd shown the coalition that the matriarch was real and that the old prophecies spoke truth. The balance was shifting, and Alara Whitewood, the Omega who should have died, stood at the center of the change, surrounded by family she'd chosen and wolves she'd saved. 6 months later, the Northern Territories had transformed completely. What had started as a single valley now encompassed 3 connected regions, with dens and gathering spaces spread throughout. 200 wolves called Alara's pack home now, with more arriving weekly. The hierarchy had indeed changed. Alphas still existed. Their strength and leadership were valued, but they shared authority with Omegas, whose empathic abilities made them natural mediators and healers. Betas found new purpose in roles that matched their skills rather than their birth rank. It wasn't perfect. There were disputes, growing pains, wolves who struggled to adapt, but it was working. Slowly, undeniably, it was working. Other packs began reaching out, not to join, but to negotiate, to trade, to learn. The coalition had spread word of what they'd witnessed, and while some packs saw it as proof of danger, others saw it as proof of possibility. Change, once started, was impossible to stop. Alara stood at the valley's highest point, looking out over the territory she'd claimed and the pack she'd built. Spring had given way to summer, and the forest bloomed with life. Theron joined her, as he often did in quiet moments. At some point, their bond had deepened from chosen to something more profound, a connection that felt as permanent as any fated mate bond, but built on foundation of choice and trust. What are you thinking? He asked. That I should be dead, Alara said honestly. That every logical outcome of that night 6 months ago ended with me frozen in the snow. But instead, she gestured to the thriving pack below. Instead, this. The moon goddess works in mysterious ways, Theron said with a slight smile. Or maybe she just has a sense of humor, Alara replied, taking the weakest wolf and making her the strongest, taking the rejected and making her a queen. You were never weak, Theron insisted, as he had many times before. You were sleeping. There's a difference. Movement at the forest edge caught Alara's attention. A small group approached, 5 wolves in travel formation, new arrivals likely seeking sanctuary. But as they drew closer, Alara's breath caught. She recognized the scents. Thomas and Mara Whitewood, her parents, flanked by 3 older wolves she didn't know. They've come, Theron observed quietly. Are you ready? Alara's first instinct was anger. These were the wolves who'd bound her power, who'd refused to help when she needed them most, who'd turned their backs when she was cast out. But she'd also learned much in the past 6 months about fear and choices and the complicated nature of love. I don't know, she admitted, but I'll hear them out. The group entered the valley, and Alara descended to meet them. By the time she reached the gathering space, half the pack had assembled, protective and wary. Thomas and Mara shifted into human forms. They looked older than Alara remembered, worn down by guilt and grief. Her mother's eyes were red from crying. Alara, Thomas began, his voice breaking. Why? Alara interrupted, her voice hard. That's all I want to know. Why did you bind me? Why did you refuse to help when I was cast out? Why? Mara stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Because we were afraid. When you were born, a seer told us what you would become. She said you were the matriarch, that you'd be hunted by every alpha in the territories. We thought if we bound your power, if we made you appear weak, you'd be safe. Safe? Alara's voice rose. You call what I endured safe? Years of humiliation, of being treated like garbage, of believing I was worthless. That was your idea of safety? We were wrong, Thomas said, stepping beside his mate. We were cowards. We thought the binding would protect you until you were old enough to handle the truth. But then, he shook his head, you fit so well into Omega life. You survived by being overlooked, and we convinced ourselves that maybe the seer was wrong, that maybe you were better off without that burden. So you decided my life for me, Alara said bitterly. You chose weakness over strength, humiliation over pride, safety over freedom, and you never even told me the truth. I know, Mara whispered. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The pack watched in tense silence. The Silver Moon Guard had shifted into protective positions around Alara, ready to defend if needed, but Alara raised a hand, stopping them. Why come now? She asked. You've known for months where I am. Why wait until now? Because we were ashamed, Thomas admitted, because we knew we'd failed you. But when we heard about the battle at the Southern Ridge, when we heard that you'd shown mercy to wolves who came to destroy you, his voice broke. We realized you'd become everything we were too afraid to let you be. And we hoped, we prayed, that maybe you'd show us the same mercy. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mara added quickly. I know we don't deserve it, but we brought something, information you need to have. She gestured to the 3 older wolves with them. They shifted, revealing 2 men and a woman, all ancient and weathered. These are the last surviving members of the Order of the Seeing Moon, Mara explained. They know the complete prophecy, and they've come to warn you. The eldest of the 3, a woman with white hair and clouded eyes, stepped forward. Matriarch, she said, her voice cracking with age, the prophecy that foretold your coming has a second half, one that was lost to time, but we remember. A chill ran down Alara's spine. What second half? The seer spoke. When the matriarch rises from rejection's pain, when balance shifts and old ways wane, beware the moon that runs with blood. When ancient evil wakes from slumber's flood. For every light must have its shadow, every healing have its wound, and she who brings the new tomorrow must face the darkness of the moon. Silence fell across the gathering. What does it mean? Ronan asked the young alpha who'd been one of the first to join Alara. It means, the seer said gravely, that the matriarch's awakening has consequences, There is an entity, old as the moon goddess herself, that has been sleeping for millennia. An entity of chaos and destruction sealed away by the first matriarch 3,000 years ago. And your awakening. She looked at Alara with sympathy and sorrow. Your awakening will draw its attention. We'll wake it. We'll bring it here. When? Theron demanded, moving to Alara's side. The blood moon, the seer replied. 3 months from now, when the autumn moon turns red, the seal will weaken, and it will come for her, for the power she represents, for the chance to end the balance once and for all. Alara felt the weight of every eye on her. She'd just started to build something real, something lasting. And now there was another threat, another battle. But she'd learned something in the past 6 months. She'd learned that she wasn't alone. That strength came from community, not just power. That even the darkest prophecies could be faced with hope. Then we have 3 months to prepare, she said firmly. 3 months to train, to gather allies, to strengthen our defenses. She looked at each of her wolves in turn. The Silver Moon Guard who'd waited centuries, the Omegas who'd found sanctuary, the Alphas who'd chosen wisdom over dominance, even her parents who'd failed her but sought redemption. We've faced impossible odds before. We'll face them again. Together. Theron's hand found hers, squeezing gently. His presence was strength and certainty and love, all the things she'd never thought she'd have. Together, he echoed, and the pack took up the cry. Together. Alara turned back to her parents. She wasn't ready to forgive them, might never be ready. But she could see them clearly now, not as villains, but as frightened wolves who'd made terrible choices out of misguided love. You can stay, she said finally. You can try to earn back what you've lost, but know that trust isn't given freely here. It's earned through action, through choice, through time. Thank you, Mara breathed. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Alara said. If this entity is coming, we'll need every wolf we can get, including you. She addressed the entire pack then, her voice carrying the same authority she'd used on the battlefield. The prophecy speaks of darkness, of trials ahead, of a threat that could undo everything we've built. But prophecies aren't destiny, they're warnings, opportunities to prepare, and we will prepare. She raised her hand, and her eyes glowed with ethereal light. I am Alara Whitewood, the matriarch, daughter of the moon goddess and heir, to the balance. I was rejected. I was cast out. I was left to die. And I rose anyway. I claimed my power. I built my pack. I showed mercy when others showed cruelty. And I will face whatever comes next with the same strength. She looked at Theron, her chosen mate, her anchor. At the Silver Moon Guard, her eternal protectors. At the wolves who'd left everything to follow her vision. At her parents who'd failed her, but might yet find redemption. We are the Northern Pack. We are the ones who said no to oppression and yes to freedom. We are the wolves who believe strength comes in many forms, who value healing as much as fighting, who choose unity over hierarchy. Her voice rose, filling the valley, reaching every soul present. And when the blood moon rises, when the darkness comes, we will stand together. We will fight together. And we will show this ancient evil the same thing we showed the coalition, the same thing we show any threat to the balance. She shifted into her massive silver wolf form, her presence blazing like captured moonlight. That the matriarch has awakened, and nothing will make her sleep again. The pack howled as one, the sound echoing across the northern territories, a declaration and a promise and a warning all at once. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the world, something old and terrible stirred at the sound, and smiled. The balance had been restored. But every restoration has a price, and Alara Whitewood's trials were just beginning. And so Ilara's journey transformed from survival to sovereignty, from victim to victor, from the Omega rejected and left to die to the matriarch who united wolves and restored the balance. She learned that power without wisdom is tyranny, that strength without mercy is cruelty, and that true leadership means lifting others up rather than standing above them. She discovered that the mate bond isn't just about fate, it's about choice. That family isn't just blood, it's the souls. who stand with you when the world tears you down. That weakness is often just strength waiting for its moment to wake. But what happens when an ancient evil rises to challenge everything she's built? When the blood moon comes and the darkness takes form? When the final test of her power arrives? That's a story for another time. What do you think? Was justice served? Did Alara show too much mercy or exactly what was needed? Would you have joined her pack or stayed with the old ways? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your perspectives on these characters' choices. If you enjoyed this story of rejection, redemption, and rising power, hit that like button and share it with fellow werewolf story lovers. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter in this saga. Because when the blood moon rises and the ancient evil awakens, Alara Whitewood will face her greatest challenge yet. And you won't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for listening to this tale of wolves and destiny, of power reclaimed and balance restored. Until next time, may your own inner wolf find its voice, and may you never let anyone